Paul is a man who spent lots of his time teachings from the law and the prophets, and spent his time as a teacher of Jewishness prior to his conversion to belief that Jesus is the Messiah. A lot of people feel that Paul gave up his Jewish training, gave up his Jewishness in order to become a Christian. Well, I guess in some ways that's true, and in some ways that's not true. And there's lots of arguments throughout the centuries. I'm not here to resolve all the debates and the discussions. But what we are trying to see is that Paul and Jesus have to be teaching the same thing. Otherwise, Paul is not an apostle of the Messiah named Jesus. So we're looking at Jesus teaching love God and love others, and this is his hermeneutic. Jesus is teaching love God, love others, and when you read the law, and when you read the prophets, and you're doing the law and the prophets, it's all about love. What does Paul teach? Romans 13, beginning with verse 8. Owe no man anything, but to love one another, for he that loves another has fulfilled the law. For this, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you shall not covet. If there is any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love your neighbor as yourself. Because he says here in verse 10, love works no ill to his neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of law. So before we get into our segments where we're going to sit down here and look at what is available to these men and these people as Bible writings, Paul is teaching that the Torah teaches us to love, and that when a disciple of Jesus learns how to love, they have fulfilled the law of Moses, these first 5 books of the Bible. So this is actually very profound. So turn over here to Galatians chapter 5, and it is also another place where he says a very similar concept. Brethren, Galatians chapter 5, verse 13. Brethren, you have been called unto liberty. Only use not liberty for an occasion to the flesh, but by love serve one another. Why? The answer is in verse 14. For all the law, all the Torah, that's the teachings of Moses, is fulfilled in one word or a phrase or a saying. This, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So Paul is also teaching to fulfill the law is to love your neighbor. Love your God, love your neighbor. That in doing these two things, you have fulfilled the law. There's lots of details about the law. There's lots of arguments about the law. And it's actually a very important document. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in instructions and the concepts of why the law is important in our next segment.